Hi, welcome. Life is like mountains and valleys and in between. You have a real experience up here, what we call a mountain peak experience or something where, you know, really good. It's just an exciting, high, wonderful time with God, for example. You get a real revelation or you get this wonderful sense of joy or hope in the future and or God did something special in your life. Yeah, everything's good. And then it drops. And you go like metaphorically, like a metaphor, like a picture, into the valley. Life has a lot of valleys. You know what I'm talking about? Bad times, hard times, dark times, questioning times, confusion, and difficult times like we're getting hurt or bullied or, all sorts of stuff. So it goes up and down and up and down. Well, literally, the three apostles, Peter, James, and John, and Jesus, came down off of the mountaintop experience. That's a good way of saying it. I meant to say mountaintop, not peak, either way. It's a mountaintop experience. Then you go rock bottom. You get into the yuck of life, like into the nitty gritty, into stuff that's, tough. And so, by the way, the enemy is in the valleys. A lot of times. He sees your mountaintop experience, he gets mad. We're talking about the devil and demons. And as soon as you come out of it, or you get into life itself, and it gets hard. You might come home from a trip. For example, I just heard of a story where a person comes home with a wonderful experience, and all of a sudden the kid just vomits. They get sick, or something else happens. Like I've had it many times where I have a really wonderful time where God really worked in me, and then I'm hit by temptation of the devil of trying to, do something wrong or whatever. It's just various things. It goes like this a lot of times. So what you want to do is take the mountaintop experiences, the peak up here, and then you pull what God has taught you and you hold on to it through the dark times. And you remember what that mountaintop experience was. You try to remember it. Well, Jesus comes down into the muck, into the muck and yuck and muck. Comes down, and Peter, James, and John, and then he's hit with all sorts of stuff that happens. Let's kind of read that story a bit. And I'll tell you what, Mark, Peter, who gave the book to Mark, basically wrote it, and Peter's behind the writing of Mark's word here, this letter, has 244 words in this story. It's the longest one. And then Matthew has 144. So Mark is almost twice as many words. So it's the long version. And then no, that's in Matthew. Luke is 144. Sorry. So it's a lot. And then you have Matthew, which only has 110 words. So it's Mark, and then Luke, and then Matthew. Like a lot of words in Mark. So it's very cool. We have a lot of details here in Mark's thing. So now that's what it says. When they came out of Mount Hermon, it doesn't say Mount Hermon, but it's probably that mountain. When they came to the other disciples, they saw a large crowd. Now picture there's a lot of people. So we have 9 disciples over here, and the 3, and Jesus comes and meets up with them. There's a large crowd around them, and, oh boy, here we go again. The infamous, famous, the scribes, the teachers of the law. Here they are again, which is pretty amazing that they're way up north here. It could have been outside of Galilee. They don't go outside of Galilee. I mean, they don't like going out of their own town because they feel like their own nation, especially some of the Jewish people, because they feel like it's unclean and defiled. They come back in and they actually have to take a bath as a ceremonial washing to get clean. We've talked about that before. So they come, they're all the way up there, and that just shows, probably from Jerusalem or something, that these guys are probably sent, maybe, the Bible doesn't say this, we're surmising and kind of guessing, they're sent to monitor Jesus, to keep an eye on him, to watch him. What's he up to? Trying to find something wrong. And so it seems like they have found something wrong here, because they actually got into a big questioning, debate, arguing, and the Greek word is used in different places of the Gospels for arguing. They started to get a big argument with the disciples of Jesus, the 9. And what happened, here's a big story here, is that there's a father in the group, because Jesus meets him here. He says, what are you guys questioning about? He's talking, I think, to the scribes, and he's kind of saying, in a way, he could be saying, what are you picking on my disciples for now? He said, what do you question? What's your question now? What's your accusation? What are you discussing? He's going to try and help his disciples. He tries to help you too. He listens to you. He listens to all your conversations. He listens to your struggles. He's in the valley with you. He's in the dark places. He's just as much there as he was in the mountaintop and the mountain peak. So it says, as soon as all the people saw Jesus, by the way, it says they were arguing and discussing something, questioning them. So they were questioning the disciples. Jesus questioned them. And then it says, as soon as all the people saw Jesus, an interesting, very interesting phrase here if you read it. By the way, we're in Mark 9:14 is where it starts here. It says, as soon as all the people saw Jesus, they were like astonished. They were overwhelmed with wonder and ran to greet him. They ran up to him, all the crowds. Oh, there's Jesus, there's Jesus. Now, why were they overwhelmed with wonder? Well, some people have thought, I'm not sure, that Jesus still had an afterglow. Like, look at him. Remember, he was transfigured. He came down, and whoa, look at him. He looks different. He's not completely finished with that light bulb experience in the transfiguration. I don't know about that, because then they would ask questions. What is that? What happened? And then remember what Jesus told the three, Peter, James, and John, don't say anything about this. And so I don't know that it was it. Maybe they're just amazed at Jesus. Everything about Jesus is amazing. They were astonished. He happened to come right at the right time. That's a lesson right there. They're in this arguing, and this big situation came up, which we're going to get into. Jesus is there. He will meet you in the valley when you need him. All right, so whatever happened, they were really amazed and wondered about him. Then this is when Jesus said, like, okay, what are you guys talking about? What's the discussion? What's your questioning? What's your argument about? And then it says, a man in the crowd. So he asked the scribes. Now, one of the men in the crowd spoke up. This is the Father. And the story is about his son. Luke says his only son. And I'll just tell you right up front, kind of get to the punchline, give you a spoiler alert. Jesus heals his son. Always. Everybody that ever came to Jesus in the Gospels, they got healed. It's just pretty cool. Very cool. So, by the way, his only son is what Luke said. Which, do you recognize any of the other stories? We've kind of done one of them yet so far. Remember how Jesus healed Jairus' only daughter? And there's another one where this widow of Nain, where she was coming out in a funeral, and he raised the dead. Two people raised the dead here, and he almost was raised the dead, it seemed like. The son of Nain, the widow who had only son. So God cares about the individual families and the ones that have just one kid. He really gives them back to the parent. Very cool. It says, a man in the crowds answered, teacher, rabbi. He recognized him. I brought you my son. So he heard about the fame of Jesus up here, probably Mount Hermon, at the foot of the mountain there, excuse me. I brought to your other disciples. I brought to you, but they weren't there. You weren't there. And so, I had them try and heal him, because the fame of Jesus and healings was spread, all over. And so, hey, wait, I'll bring him. And they couldn't heal him. The disciples could not heal. Now, Jesus gave them authority and power at one time, if you remember in the past, where he sent them out. Well, here they couldn't do it. By the way, that's a lesson that I think we need to take to heart, and that is some demons are harder than others. Some are stronger than others. There's levels. Like the disciples, these nine of them, could not deliver that boy from those demons. Now later we're going to go deeper into why that is, but we'll get into that later. Like not this video as much, not a little bit, but actually we'll a little bit anyway. But we'll go deeper into it later. Sorry. So he said, I'll read it. What he said, teacher, I brought you my son who is demonized. He has a demon who is oppressing him, a spirit. And I'll give you, like, there's about 6 or so, I think, symptoms of this. In this case, he says, has robbed him of speech. So the boy couldn't talk because of that evil spirit. Loss of speech. Whenever it seizes him, and he goes through what's called seizures, It throws him to the ground. He foams at the mouth, gnashes his teeth, and becomes rigid, real stiff like that. I asked your disciples, since you weren't there, to drive out the spirit, but they could not. They couldn't do it. Now, I think that's what stimulated or stirred the discussions and questions and arguments. Maybe we don't know what the arguments were. What were the questions of the scribes? Well, I think they were saying, well, who gives you the right to try and deliver them? Like, you can't do it. Who has the authority, and where's Jesus? And they're coming at Jesus because they're trying to get to Jesus through the disciples. So the scribes are like really verbally attacking these guys. You're going to go through verbal attacks as you grow in the Lord. People are going to question you. People are going to question God. It's an attack of God, by the way. Every time I've ever talked to someone who disagrees and all that, it's not me that they're really dealing with. I'm his representative, and it's God they're having issues with. He's not the one to have issues with, by the way. Don't ever get mad at God. If you do, he can take your anger and you beat on his chest, so to speak. Why did this happen? Oh, this is terrible. Well, it's not really his fault. So they really got at these apostles, poor disciples. They're like, where's Jesus? And sometimes it seems like he's not going to be there when you need him, but he'll come. All right. And so there it is. And then Jesus said this, "Oh, faithless and perverse generation. Oh, unbelieving generation." Jesus replied, "How long shall I stay with you? How long shall I put up with you? Bring the boy to me." This is an amazing statement here. He goes, "Oh, faithless generation, faithless. You have no faith. You're unbelieving generation. It's perverse. It's really weird. You should trust. You should have faith. How long shall I stay with you?" He longs to be with the Father, I guess. But he like, how long is this going to take? You're not getting it. They could have trusted in God and gotten delivered. How long shall I put up with you? I am forbearing them. Listen to those words, putting up with. I'm just putting up with you guys. It's true. And then bring the boy to me. Now, this is the biggest time that Jesus ever, and there's more to the story. We'll get to it. I love that last phrase. I don't want to miss that. Bring the boy to me. 5 very powerful words. Simple, but powerful. Bring the boy to me. That's the secret in every part of life. That's the secret to your victory, your success. Get to Jesus. Okay, so I love that. Jesus didn't go, I'm not sure. If they couldn't do it, what am I going to do? He just said, bring the boy to me. Jesus, by the way, right in the middle of all this muck, this yuck, like I said, just has the answer. He is the answer. He said, bring the boy to me. He knew God's will. He knew that God wanted to deliver this boy. I don't know how old the person is. And we'll get into more of what, like how old he really was. But who is this faithless generation that he's talking about? Is he talking about all of them? Very, very possible. I think because of the word generation, he's talking about everybody. Like everybody around him. All right. Faithless means having no faith. Do you have faith? Don't doubt God. Fight unbelief. Like really fight it. I have to. I fight. It's a battle sometimes of unbelief. So you really have to, fight that and trust God. Who is this faithful generation? Now, in this case, we have these people. We have the scribes there. Definitely faithless. They don't believe in Jesus at all. The crowds, they didn't deliver that boy. And he's just kind of say everybody in the whole generation is bad. The father, which we'll get to in the next video, because I could go on and on. This one because it's pretty long. The father, his faith has something to do with this story. It's really important. And then the disciples, oh, faithless generation. I think it could really be focused on everyone, but the emphasis might be to his own followers. Why do you say that, Gordon? Because it just talked about, the disciples couldn't do it. They couldn't do it. And he says, oh, faithless generation. Like, come on, disciples. Come on, followers, my followers, my friends. He says, what is up with that? Why do you have unbelief here? Okay, so that's the kind of thing. So let's break that down a little bit more, this faithless generation. So this story Mark put here, and there's only 2 more healings, I think, deliverances or healings, definitely the last exorcism where demons are delivered for the rest of the gospel. Remember, he did it a lot, hundreds, thousands, who were delivered from demon powers. So it's the last one in the book. And it's the last miracle in the book of healing people. There's another one later of Bartimaeus, the blind Bartimaeus, and his companion, his friend or whatever it is. So all right, so the faithless generation, look how important faith is. Mark is emphasizing this idea of faith. Jesus is the Messiah, Jesus is the Son of God, and nobody believes it, basically. So unbelieving generation is what he called them. Has to do with faith, remember? Kind of tie that together. Unbelieving, faithless. Next one. The authority of Jesus as Messiah, Son of God. If they would have just trusted in Jesus. If you just trust in Jesus, if you have faith, you're going to get results. You're going to get victory. The third one is the call for greater faith for the Father. We'll get to that later. And it has to do with faith again. And the disciples, and then he talks about prayer and fasting later on the keys to get real faith, and that is faith. So faith, 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 faith. 4 different things. And by the way, there's 4 different times, times in this story itself. In this story is 4 times it describes the symptoms of the sun. Let's go over those symptoms real quick. I think one more thing, and I think we're kind of finished for right now. We'll temporarily put it off until the next video. So the boy's symptoms are seizures. I hope I'm spelling that right. That should be E. I don't know if you see it. Seizures are convulsions. Seizures are go like this and jerk it all. So he had this often, is what the Gospels say. He had it often. And he had it from a young childhood. So I don't know how old this boy is. Could be a teenager. Could be a young man. But he's had it. Maybe he's a boy. Maybe he did it like from age 1, 2, 3, 4. Maybe he's 9 or 13 or who knows. But it's seizures. The guy had a lot of different seizures. Okay. Foaming of the mouth. Literally white, spittle or whatever coming out, like junk coming out of his mouth. Foaming at the mouth. Grinding of teeth, just grinding of teeth. His body rigidity, in other words, stiffness of body, like real stiff, and jerking, seizure. And then also he has a speech and hearing loss. I don't know if that's constant and regular. The demon power was actually causing that. And get this, he was thrown into the fire and water. Like water meaning streams or puddle, well, not about puddles, but rivers, streams, lakes, ponds. Excuse me. And it was since he was very young. A lot of symptoms. That sounds dead on epilepsy. But it may not be epilepsy at all. It could be that some spirits cause that. Could be. It could be just a demon doing all those things, and they really resemble. They're very similar to epilepsy. I don't believe epilepsy necessarily is all like evil spirits doing it. It could be some of them, but you get the spirit out, maybe the epilepsy go. But it could be. I think it's really not epilepsy, probably, but it's similar to epilepsy. It has all the same things. It's what's called a grand mal, M-A-L. Grand mal. It sounds like grandma, but it's a big one. That's what happens when people has a grand mal seizure, an epileptic seizure. I don't know if young ones have ever heard of epilepsy. You may be familiar with it. People do have epilepsy, and they go into that. I know a friend who had it years ago. I never saw him go into a grand mal, but he's had it. He used to have that problem with seizures. So here we have a big dilemma. We're going to kind of stop in a minute here. And what happens, I already told you, Jesus literally just delivers this guy. Really cool story. So I love that Jesus is the one. No wonder there's wonder. It's like they marveled at him coming at that right time. Right at that time, he shows up. So I love this story. It's in the Gospels. It actually happened. It's in 3 of them. A lot of times John didn't do these stories. He chose to do other stories about it. Of course, John was there. He watched. He's one of these apostles. And there he is. Jesus is the man. The man of God's plan. The one and only. Unprecedented. God's servant, God's man at the time. So I hope you got something out of that. We'll pick it back up and we'll study it some more later. God bless you. Thanks.